She told investigators that she killed at least 31 individuals, saying, "My ambition is to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived." I'm Billy, and this is Dead Giveaway. All right. So, you guessed Ethan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was right.
You guessed the nurse.
That was terrifying. I can't believe that she said that.
Are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again. And this one is a doozy. This is a really crazy one.
It's always terrifying to me that people that go into the medical profession that are supposed to be like helping people, saving lives, turn out to be like that.
So I'm curious if you know this one.
Is it here in Kerrville?
No.
Oh, okay. Is it in Dallas? Is it in Texas?
Do you want to listen to the episode?
Oh, sure.
I'm curious to know if you know this one as I begin to reveal.
I probably will, but let's hear it.
Okay. The story begins in 1854 in the crowded, immigrant-heavy neighborhoods of Boston. At birth, her name was Honora Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
And her early childhood was a blueprint for psychological fracture. Do you know this one?
Wait, what year is it?
1854. So her father, Peter Kelly, was a man whose erratic behavior was a matter of public record long before the family collapsed. A tailor by trade, Peter was better known to his neighbors for a spiraling descent into what was then called eccentricity. Now that just means you're an artist.
Oh.
But
so you suffer from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But which, God, that was backhanded, man. But which he would, but which we would recognize today as severe untreated mental illness.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Anyways, the local legends of the Kelly household were very grim. The most enduring was that Peter eventually became so distressed by his own vision that he attempted to sew his own eyelids shut.
Oh.
When Honora's mother died of tuberculosis while Honora was still a toddler, the thin layer of structure holding the family together absolutely evaporated. What followed wasn't stability, but a cold administrative displacement. By the age of 6, the state determined that Peter Kelly was absolutely unfit to care for his children. So Honora and her sisters were removed from the home and surrendered to the Boston Female Asylum.
She was 6?
6 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Despite the name, this was an orphanage, one designed with a very specific Victorian purpose, and that was to take the unwanted daughters of the poor and turn them into a serviceable domestic workforce.
Okay. So they're training them to be maids and cooks and
nurses.
Yeah.
It was here
nurses.
that Honora learned her first lesson in survival. To be kept, you must be invisible. And to be invisible, you must be compliant. So in 1862, Honora was placed into the household of Abner Toppin in Lowell, Massachusetts. The distinction is vital, right? So Honora was not adopted. She was indentured. Indenture was a transactional arrangement of labor for room and board.
Right. You get paid nothing and you're working your butt off all day long.
She was a servant who was allowed to sit at the dinner table, essentially, right?
Oh.
A girl living in a house where she was reminded daily that she did not belong by blood or by law.
Yeah.
It was indentured servitude.
Yeah.
She was put there with the intent that you do what they say. In an act of total self-preservation, Honora Kelly was effectively erased. She took the family's name and reinvented her history as Jane Toppin.
Oh, I do know that name, yes.
She learned to scrub away her Irish heritage and mirror the behaviors of the middle class. She was not impulsive, she was controlled, but to some few, she was known as Jolly Jane. As Jane moved into adulthood, her options were very, very few. It was domestic service, the textile mills, or nursing. So she chose nursing. At the time, the profession was undergoing a transition toward professional standards, but it was still far from regulated. In the 1880s, everything rested on the integrity of the person standing at the bedside. In 1885, Jane entered the training program at Cambridge Hospital. She didn't just do the job, she mastered it. She was competent, reliable, and possessed a warmth that felt like a cure in itself.
Oh.
She became the favorite of the doctors and patients alike. Eventually, they gave her a nickname that reflected exactly what the world saw.
Oh, no.
Jolly Jane. It was a friendly, reassuring mask that suggested she had everything under control. But in a system built entirely on the assumption of care, no one thought to look for the intent hiding behind the smile.
Exactly.
In 1885, Jane enters the training program at Cambridge Hospital and later the prestigious Massachusetts General. Inside these inside these wards, the role of a nurse is one of profound, unsupervised intimacy. Mm-hmm. In the late 19th century, doctors would make their rounds, issue orders, and then just disappear for hours.
Right, and then the nurses were...
Not really sure much has changed. I see the nurses more than we typically see the doctors.
100%.
Actually, with the exception of ours. She's awesome.
Our doctor's awesome.
Yes. This left the nurse as the sole arbiter of the patient's reality. They administer the medications, they monitor the vitals, and they are the only ones present when a patient's condition begins to turn. That level of access creates an unprecedented opportunity. And for Jane, it is where the performance of Jolly Jane meets a dark internal curiosity.
Yeah.
It begins with the tools of the trade, morphine and atropine. Mm-hmm. Both are common in a Victorian hospital and both are incredibly powerful. Morphine is the great sleeper. It slows the body, making the breathing shallow and the pulse weak until the pupils constrict to the size of pinpoints.
Oh.
Atropine is the opposite. It accelerates the heart, flushes the skin, and causes the pupils to dilate into wide, unresponsive black holes.
So we got uppers and downers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Jane doesn't just learn the dosages, she masters the chemistry of the transition between life and death.
Oof.
Instead of simply administering these drugs to heal, she begins to manipulate them. The changes are incremental at first, a slightly higher dose of morphine here, a corrective spike of atropine there. She begins to treat her patients not as people, but as subjects in a private laboratory.
Oh, so she's using both of those drugs, which probably don't counteract very well together.
She watches the effects and notes the contrast and obsesses over the transition between the states of the patients.
Okay.
But as the investigation would later reveal, this was never just a clinical fascination.
No. She's trying to kill people.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Jane got her jollies. Let's just preface it with this.
That's horrible.
Jane would... No, we'll get there.
No, I
think it's
believe
horrible.
you. Yeah.
When Jane would later describe a profound sense of satisfaction derived from these moments. The fascination was not rooted in a medical science, but in a deeply personal and unsettling obsession with the process of someone's passing. In her own words, she described experiencing a voluptuous pleasure while patients were dying.
Whoa, so she was aroused by it?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
The intimacy of the nurse-patient relationship allowed her to remain physically close during these final moments, too. So observing the exact point where a life ceased for her was the penultimate,
oh my gosh.
Awesome. So for her, the hospital ward was not a place of healing, but a space to witness the ultimate transition of the human condition.
Yeah.
In some cases, placing herself in the bed beside them as they passed away.
She would lay next to them?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she would get into the bed.
That is so disturbing.
Yes. Are you creepy?
Yeah, no thank you.
Hell nah. By alternating between substances, again using morphine to bring a patient to the edge of a coma and then utilizing atropine to suddenly restart the system, she discovered a sense of absolute power.
Oh, because she could get them to that point and then bring them back and do it over again.
And this was her discovery of control.
Okay.
So she began to dictate the timing of a patient's decline, intentionally and
then she could control if they got better and if they got worse.
She managed the progression of their symptoms, stretching out the process over hours or sometimes even days.
Wow.
Ooh, that was a big thunderclap right there. Man. Under her care, patients were no longer individuals receiving treatment. They had become the focal point of an elaborate, hidden ritual. Despite the irregularities, the hospital environment provided the perfect cover. In an era where medical monitoring was primitive and sudden deaths in a hospital were just common, her actions remained undetected. The fluctuation in a patient's state were attributed to the natural progression of illness rather than the deliberate interference of a nurse.
Especially during that time period.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Even, like the 90s was hard to keep track of.
Right,
1890s is even worse.
It's crazy. And so Jane had mastered the art of prolonging the end of someone's passing, turning the act of dying into a controlled, private, intimate performance that she alone got to enjoy.
That's so sad.
It's sick. Like, she is twisted.
Very.
Eventually, Jane makes a strategic move. She leaves the institutional structure of the hospital and transitions into private nursing.
Uh-oh.
On the surface, this is a natural career progression for a nurse of her reputation. But in reality, it is a move toward total invisibility.
Yeah, because then nobody's monitoring her.
Exactly. And at the turn of the 20th century, private nursing operated in a complete and utter vacuum. There were no centralized records to track a nurse's performance, no cross-case comparisons, and absolutely no regulatory bodies monitoring patient outcomes across different households.
Right. You have no boss. There's no boards or state licensings or anything like that are going to come in and check and see how you're operating, if you're following guidelines. Yeah. You're basically just going off of reputation.
Right.
Which everybody seemed to love her.
Well, that's exactly right. And once Jane crossed the threshold of a private home, she was essentially beyond the reach of law. Each case existed in absolute isolation. And within that isolation, trust became the only currency that absolutely mattered between nurse and patient.
Yep.
In these private homes, Jane is no longer just a medical professional. She becomes an integral part of the household. She is the steady hand during a crisis and a source of unwavering comfort for grieving relatives and the person the family relies on for their most intimate needs.
So is this a person, and you may not know, but is this a person like kind of like an on-call nurse where if somebody in your house got sick, you would call for a nurse? Or is this somebody who she's going in taking care of one specific family and taking care of all their ailments?
I think it's kind of all of the above. I think she just... whatever's needed here, whatever's needed there. And she probably has multiple families of these at once that she's probably looking after.
Kind of like an on-call nurse but you have multiple clients.
And I would assume that's based upon severity of the patient.
Sure.
How attentive and how often she needs to be there. And
or if it's as needed or if it's a regular thing.
Right. Or if she's got to be there at their bedside until they pass, which she honestly can control that outcome.
Yeah.
So, which is sick. And again, she eats at their tables, listens to their secrets, and sleeps in the rooms adjacent to the suffering.
Oh my gosh.
She becomes a fixture of the family's domestic life. Within this environment of absolute trust, her behavior escalates. The experiments of the hospital ward evolve into a refined and lethal method.
Mm-hmm.
She continues to use her knowledge of morphine and atropine, but now the stakes are higher, right? She isn't just watching biological transitions. She is playing with the emotions of the people who call her a friend.
Yeah. People who are counting on her for their lives, basically.
Yeah. She administers substances to control the physical state of her patients with terrifying precision. In some cases, she slows them down, bringing them to the very brink of death, only to stabilize them just enough to offer the family a flicker of false hope. Then, once she has savored that emotional response, she repeats the cycle.
Oh my gosh.
It's absolutely
just horrifying.
Evil.
Yeah.
This is no longer about learning how drugs work, right?
No. Now she's playing with people.
Yeah, she's messing with people intentionally. Yeah. She's getting a kick out of it.
Yeah. And like you said, like she can bring him down to that point where it gets her whatever you want to say. Like I don't even want to say.
Her Jolly Janes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting. But then she can bring him back and do it over again.
So again, it's about the thrill of being the one who decides, I'm going to keep you alive or I'm going to kill you.
Or you're done,
right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you think
God
back.
Complex?
You got to think about where she came from too, and the causality. No control. She was forced into
complete
indigent
chaos.
servitude.
Yeah.
And she had no choice. Now she does.
Now she controls everything.
Now she's in charge.
Yeah.
She's able to make these decisions, and it gets her pretty excited about it. So that it's a very sick ordeal.
Yeah.
What makes this phase different and significantly more chilling is the level of intimacy. Her victims are no longer anonymous figures in a hospital bed. They are people who know her,
Right.
people who depend on her,
She's
and
spending
people
time
who
with.
have welcomed her into their lives.
Yeah.
She poisons her own foster sister, Elizabeth Topin, watching her die while Jane comforts the very family she is destroying. She moves from house to house, leaving a trail of natural deaths in her wake.
Jeez.
Individually, each death was explainable.
Right,
And
I'm sure.
In
Yeah.
an era of limited forensics, a sudden heart failure or slow decline in an elderly patient isn't going to trigger an investigation or have people looking too closely.
Was it all elderly people? Okay.
I think so.
Except for maybe her sister probably wasn't elderly.
Yeah, I think honestly, she said men, women, the helpless, I believe.
Yeah, so it could have been anyone.
Multiple deaths in different households all share a single consistent factor: the presence of Jolly Jane.
Yeah.
Collectively, people begin to realize that this is the pattern that's beginning to emerge.
Good. I was going to say, eventually people are going to start talking and yeah, okay.
Yeah, so she thinks the mask is still perfectly intact, right? And she's kind of not realizing that people are beginning to see her ambition growing. And so she's no longer just a nurse. She is a predator who has realized that as long as you are loved, you are above suspicion.
Right.
But people are really starting to begin to be getting suspicious. Sorry, that was really
only
shitty.
so many people under your care can die before people are going to start going, hang on a second. Even back then, I mean, people talk.
Well, and so that's the whole thing is that, collectively a pattern was beginning to emerge, and the multiple deaths in different households that all shared a single consistent factor was the presence of old Jolly Jane.
Yeah.
And she's no longer just a nurse. She's actively a predator seeking more and more.
Right.
And so she thinks that because if she's loved, she's above suspicion. But everybody is starting to realize and they're putting it together.
Right.
The turning point of the entire saga comes in the summer of 1901 with a single family, the Davises. In a historical spree that would eventually stun the nation, Jane Topin moved into the Davis household and essentially began to dismantle it from the inside out.
Jeez.
It started with Maddie Davis, the matriarch who died under Jane's care in July. Following the funeral, Jane accompanied the grieving family back to their home at Catamet to act as a source of comfort. Within weeks, Maddie's husband, Alden, was dead. Shortly after, their daughter, Minnie, followed.
What? She's taken out the whole family?
Finally, the youngest daughter, Genevieve, was also gone.
Oh my gosh.
Four members of a single family and a prominent family were dead within a compressed period of 40 days.
No. And it's not like, they got typhoid fever or something that was contagious and sweeping through the house. Like this was
pretty brazen.
Yeah.
In isolation, each of these deaths could have been explained. Maddie was elderly, Alden was heartbroken, the daughters were frail. But in the early 1900s, heart failure was a convenient catch-all diagnosis that satisfied most coroners. Collectively, the timeline was impossible to ignore.
Right, 40 days.
Yeah, the sheer velocity of the deaths drew the attention of the surviving relatives, specifically Minnie's husband, who refused to believe that an entire bloodline could simply vanish in a month. At the center of this domestic graveyard stood old Jolly Jane. She was the one who had administered the medicine, the one who had held their hands as they slipped away, and the one who was now the last person left in the room. But it's here that the mask really begins to crack and revealing a startling petty greed. As the dirt was still being shoveled over the coffins of the Davis family, Jane was already counting the cost of her service.
Oh.
She didn't just stay to mourn, she stayed to collect. She began aggressively demanding payment for her professional care.
From their estate?
Yes, consisting on her wages, even as the family's estate was in total grief-stricken chaos.
Oh my gosh.
This was not the behavior of a devoted family friend by any means. It was the behavior of a creditor closing a tab.
Yeah.
To the surviving relatives, this cold insistence on her fee while the bodies were barely cold was the first real sign that something was deeply and fundamentally wrong. The suspicion of the Davis family acted as a catalyst at this point. Questions were asked that had never been asked before, like, where else has she worked? Where has she treated in the last 5 years? Who has she treated in the last 5 years?
Okay.
What happened to the people in those houses once the doors were closed?
Yeah. So now they're starting to really question and
Yep.
look into things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
As investigators began to map her history, the connections formed a terrifying geography of death. They looked back at the Toppin family, the Davises, and the countless patients in between. Once these points were connected, the pattern was absolutely undeniable. This wasn't just bad luck, it was a trail.
Yeah.
And in late 1901, the unthinkable happened. Bodies were exhumed.
Oh.
At the time, forensic science was in its infancy. In the stomachs and tissues of the Davis family, examiners found the chemical fingerprints of morphine and atropine.
Uh-huh. Which they didn't need, I'm sure.
This discovery shifted the case, and it moved from the realm of tragic coincidence to the reality of cold, calculated murder. On October 29th, 1901, Jane Toppin was arrested. For the first time in her life, the world was no longer looking at the version of herself that she had created.
Yeah.
The investigation had moved from the pattern to the person. The case of Jane Toppin is not defined by mystery alone. Unlike many serial killers whose motives remained locked in the dark, Jane eventually gave the world the answer that it was looking for. There was a name, there was a method, and in the end, there was a full, harrowing confession.
Jeez.
But what makes this case truly significant and what keeps it in the annals of criminal history is the total breakdown of trust that it represents.
Right.
It is a story of a system built on care being utilized as a mechanism for murder.
Well, yeah, you
Yep.
go into your doctor's office or somewhere, you have an automatic trust. It's not somebody you have to get to know. You automatically trust them because that's their job.
Yep. And she remains a name associated with comfort. Jolly Jane remains a name associated with comfort, yet it is forever attached to a woman whose only true ambition was measured in the number of helpless lives that she could extinguish. She didn't just kill for money and she didn't kill for revenge.
Yeah.
She killed because she enjoyed the power of the transition and the euphoria that gave her.
Ugh.
So by the time the medical community and the public understood the contradiction behind her smile, her pattern had already run its course.
Yeah.
She was found not guilty by reason of insanity and spent the rest of her life in an asylum,
Whoa.
eventually succumbing to the same paranoia she once inflicted on others.
Wow.
She died in 1938, a quiet end to a woman who had once hoped to be the most prolific killer the world had ever seen. And I do believe, I think that I think it was confirmed 31
Yeah.
at least, but I think it was estimated about like 100 or more.
They think it was way more than that.
They
but
think it
she
was way
confessed
more.
to 31.
I believe so.
Oh my gosh.
She was just an absolutely
Horror.
evil
Yes.
bitch.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So were you familiar
I don't
with this
think
one?
so. I don't think I've heard that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had never heard anything on this one
Yeah.
until I looked it up.
When you
And-
when you started to describe it, I thought I had, but now that you got into the story, no, that none of that sounds familiar, and that's shocking. Like
Yeah.
that's so terrifying.
calm demeanor of just saying, yeah, this is what I wanted
Yeah,
to do.
like just
wanted to kill
matter
as
of
many
fact,
people.
like
yeah.
I wanted to kill as many people as I could. That was very interesting
Right.
and terrifying. I have doctor's appointments coming up that I'm going to cancel now.
Well, enter at your own risk.
I know, right?
Okay,
Well,
guys.
thanks for listening. Hope you guys thought that was fun and interesting and terrifying.
Yeah, let us know if you do.
Yeah.
So today's resource spotlight is the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care.
Okay, good.
While Jane Toppin operated as a Wild West era of nursing with zero oversight, today there are organizations dedicated to ensuring that care never becomes a cover for cruelty. The National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care, formerly the nation's National Citizens Coalition for Nursing Home Reform, is a leading advocate for the rights of individuals receiving long-term care.
Nice.
Systems advocates, they fight for federal and state reforms to increase nursing home staffing levels and safety standards and system advocacy, directly addressing the isolation that allowed Toppin to operate. They support and provide resources for the long-term care Ombudsman's program, a nationwide network of advocates who investigate complaints and protect the residents' rights in every state.
Nice.
The organization provides families with educational tools to recognize the red flags of abuse, neglect, and exploitation before any kind of a pattern can take hold. So again, that is the National Consumer Voice for Quality Long-Term Care.
Okay.
That link is going to be right down in the show notes if you guys want to check it out, see
Much
what they're
needed.
about. Yes. If you guys have a resource spotlight that you would like us to highlight on an episode,
Absolutely.
please email it to us at deadgiveawaypodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for more, and I try my best to try to tie them into the episode. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, so I try to find something that is something new or is doing something really cool, which a lot of these are. They're doing really, really good work. But if you guys have one in particular, if it's local to your, state, city, etc., doesn't matter. Email it to us.
Yes,
send it out. We'll shout it out. Yeah.
Big town, small town, we don't care. Send it our way.
Yeah. And if you guys want to follow us on socials, those links are down in the show notes as well. Just scroll on down. You'll find it, but it's Dead Giveaway Podcast across the board. And that is the sound of my dog reacting to the rain again.
Okay. It's okay. Also, check out our Patreon.
Yes.
If you join, we can give you a little shout out on the show.
We appreciate you guys listening. This is so much fun.
Yes.
And we actually do have a lot of fun doing the show together while it's talking about some very macabre type of taboo things. This is why I shouldn't drink Prosecco while we do this episode. I keep getting lost in translation.
I think it's just a combination of that and everything else.
It's the fact that my mouth is still numb from that stinking shrimp. Like, shrimp. God.
All right. We promise not to eat spicy food next week.
Yeah, I promise. And that offer for somebody with a menthol still stands. I will pay you.
Nobody is going to take you up on that, okay? Not me, not them.
Oh, my God. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Again, we really appreciate you listening. I am going to do a little shout out real quick to these individual states, if I could get this to pull up for me here.
Oh.
Yes. We are going to shout out, again, Florida. You're awesome.
Yes.
Florida is they're raging on in there,
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Oh.
You're doing really good too. We appreciate you. New Jersey. You guys are awesome. California and Virginia.
Okay.
All of these states have been giving us a ton of listens. You guys are amazing, and we cannot thank you enough. Please share it out. Drop a review.
Yeah.
Help us spread the word. And I'm going to attempt to do this in these countries' native languages. I'm going to say thank you to Vietnam.
Oh.
No, your face.
Okay.
You're like, oh God,
I'm like totally terrified.
We're about to get canceled.
Oh my God. Oh, okay.
No,
you're joking?
No, but for real, I do want to say thank you to Vietnam. Somebody in Vietnam has been listening,
Really?
and you are amazing.
That's awesome.
As well as Hong Kong.
Okay.
Hong Kong has been giving us a ton of listens as well. You guys are freaking awesome, so thank you. Runners up are Germany and India and Canada. So that's so cool.
I still can't get over the terror I just felt thinking you were going to try to speak Vietnamese. I was like, oh God, no, please.
I could do it in Farsi or Russian. That's the only two
what
I
you
got. Yeah, but
I can do it in English.
Yeah, I could do it. Well,
and maybe Tex-Mex.
Yeah,
I can speak Tex-Mex.
Yeah.
Grassy ass.
Dim nalgas. All right, guys, that's it for us. We appreciate you listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.